Alright, in 2017, Ethan and Neela Klein helped set a precedent for fair use on YouTube.
Then, in a fantastic quickie update, we have to talk about H3H3 Productions. That, of course, Ethan and Neela Klein, we've talked about them on the show multiple times. One of the big reasons is they were being sued. It was this really disgusting situation where they were being sued by another YouTuber for copyright infringement. That YouTuber, who we won't even mention their name, was not a fan of the videos H3H3 Productions was putting out on them.
You've been lied to. Most of what you've read and heard about the lawsuit has been full of lies and misinformation.
After being sued by a man known as Bold Guy over a video where they poked fun at his bizarre parkour-style pickup content, the Kleins won a landmark case.
Yes! We won the court case! Yes!
I never thought we'd be making this video.
It was a genuine David vs. Goliath moment. Two relatively small creators crowdsourcing legal funds from their own audience and standing up against an expensive, censorious lawsuit.
I swear to God, it felt like this would never happen. It was 1.5 years we were waiting for this. And I'll tell you what, through all the grief, all the drama, man, now I'm so happy we did it. Because this is a landmark case, not just for us. But seriously, the wording that the judge put into the opinion is gonna strengthen fair use across YouTube.
But as Ethan's platform grew, launching a podcast that same year and eventually reaching a level of fame and wealth far beyond what most creators ever see, his attitude shifted. Then came October 2023, when Ethan's public image took a nosedive. He began parroting pro-Israel talking points, often referred to as Hezbollah, to his overwhelmingly progressive audience. Statements minimizing or excusing Israel's actions in Gaza flooded his content, all while he maintained the claim that he supported the Palestinian people.
So you have these terrorists that went and did this horrible attack, and then they retreated back into Gaza. Their bases are under hospitals. They shoot from schools. They embed themselves in the civilian population. They even dress as civilians when they fight.
As his audience began to shrink and his professional relationships publicly unraveled.
It doesn't matter if Jews find it offensive, Ethan.
Doesn't matter if a minority group finds something anti-Semitic?
Yes, of course, because we're not talking about Jews at all. We're talking about Israel.
I'm gonna go find a group of black people say the Confederate flag isn't racist. I'm gonna go find...
Ethan, please stop. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
You're being ridiculous. This point is
Ethan, you're making a conflation that
However
makes you look horrible. Why don't you see this?
Ethan grew increasingly hostile towards anyone who dared to criticize his framing of Israel's actions, framing many view as bad faith and morally bankrupt. And when Noah Samson released a video labeling Ethan as one of the several YouTubers who backed a genocide, Ethan didn't respond with introspection. Instead, he morphed into the very figure he once feared. Lawyered up, thousands of dollars deep, sending Noah an embarrassingly weak cease and desist letter, in a move that screams desperation more than defamation. Today's broadcast is brought to you by viewers like you. Become a member today and unlock exclusive content at patreon.com/NorthstarRadio. Noah Samson's video, The YouTubers That Backed a Genocide, is the entire reason Ethan decided to spend thousands of dollars to get his lawyers to write up a cease and desist letter. And the title alone was enough to send certain people into a spiral, Ethan included.
So this fucking little scumbag here who put me and Mudahar, Turkey Tom, and Destiny in a thumbnail and said the YouTubers who backed a genocide. Now, the only person he's probably not defaming here would be Destiny because of his comment about, he said, I believe in genocide. He said, I think, and during one conversation, like that the Palestinians should just leave. But this is fucking disgusting. And I'm not okay living in this world where these little fucking punk ass scumbags can just say this shit and get away with it.
But if you actually watch the video, and I mean actually watch it, not skim the thumbnail and start crying, you'll find that it's one of the most straightforward, well-researched pieces of content on this subject currently on YouTube. Noah goes creator by creator, dissecting their content, their rhetoric, and most importantly, the role they've played in sanitizing and justifying Israel's war crimes in Gaza. When it comes to Ethan, Noah doesn't reach, doesn't speculate, and doesn't twist words. He shows you exactly what Ethan said, plays the clip in context, and then follows it up with analysis. That's it. No smear, no hit piece, no secret agenda. Just a calm, methodical breakdown of Ethan Klein's output over the past year and a half. Honestly, most of the video isn't even about Ethan. He's a small piece of a much larger critique. The title and thumbnail may be provocative, but the substance of the video is really about how the broader media ecosystem, including YouTubers, has contributed to the normalization of Israel's genocide in Gaza. Ethan just happens to be one of the more visible examples.
The latest reporting on these negotiations continued this trend of misleading coverage, such as this story from early February. The majority of the article, headline included, frames Hamas as the instigator to a potential ceasefire failure. However, both independent observers and Israeli officials themselves acknowledged that it was actually Israel who had already broken the terms of the ceasefire agreement immediately after it was implemented. If the Times weren't running cover for a genocide, the headline of this article would read, "Israel violates ceasefire, confirmed by Israeli officials." Probably the most insane example of this sort of thing is the following headline, once again from the New York Times. Lebanon ceasefire appears to hold despite Israeli strike. If Israel struck, they violated the ceasefire. The ceasefire did not hold. Israel violated it. It's just absurd.
In his video, Noah highlights how Ethan has echoed state narratives, like Hamas using human shields, hiding under hospitals, and dressing as civilians.
In the content nuke, you can find just about every type of what we just looked at in terms of manufacturing consent. Ethan spreads atrocity propaganda.
Noah further emphasizes the impact of such rhetoric.
The entire video is kind of a lie by omission, simply because of everything we just went over. How none of it is a factor, how none of the people viewing the video that are unfamiliar with what's happening would ever come away with his video knowing the full picture, knowing some of the very valid reasons why someone like Hassan might be critical of Israeli atrocity propaganda, or might support groups like the Houthis for their heroic actions in the Red Sea against a genocidal regime. The biggest issue, I think, is that Ethan manages to do all of this while still calling himself a stalwart ally to the Palestinians.
And I've been a stalwart supporter of the Palestinian cause for many years.
This is what makes liberal Zionism so insidious. He is using humanistic appeals to things like peace and safety, but doing so in a way that distracts from the actual source of the problem. The problem is Zionism and the genocidal Israeli state. That is what's causing these problems. And people that might otherwise be able to understand if presented with the facts of the situation are simply led astray by people like Ethan, where a more right-wing Zionist might put off the average liberal with extremist claims and overtly genocidal language. A liberal Zionist draws you in with the facade of empathy. He wants to appear empathetic, as if he cares for these people, as if he doesn't ascribe to a genocidal ideology. So, in order to do that, he has to lie, and roping in otherwise progressive people into a death cult.
And let's be clear, nothing in Noah's video is defamatory. He lays out a series of facts. Ethan said this, Ethan platformed that, Ethan pushes this narrative. Then he gives his opinion, which is also protected speech. When you repeat propaganda that justifies and excuses the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, you are backing a genocide. That's not slander. That's a morally and politically grounded conclusion. And yes, we'll get into the legal side of things, specifically how this fits the definition of a SLAPP lawsuit and what that means for Noah later in this video. Ethan isn't mad because Noah lied. He's mad because Noah told the truth in a way that people actually listen to. The video doesn't need theatrics, doesn't rely on personal attacks, and doesn't even dwell on Ethan all that much. It just lays it out, bluntly, clearly, and in a way that makes it really hard to deny what you're watching, which is probably why it hit Ethan so hard, because the truth, when presented plainly, cuts deeper than any insult ever could. So beyond the cease and desist letter, what was Ethan's initial reaction to this video? What was his explanation for wanting to sue Noah Samson in the first place? Well, on March 11th, Ethan made his first statement on, you guessed it, Instagram stories. God, these bread tubers are such pathetic fucking rats. When the did I ever support a genocide? I criticize your idol Hassan, and you all resort to straight up character assassination and horrific lies. He then goes on to deny the claim on his following H3 podcast episode, very likely having not even watched the video beforehand.
So this fucking little scumbag here who put me and Mudahar, Turkey Tom, and Destiny in a thumbnail and said the YouTubers who backed the genocide. Now, the only person he's probably not defaming here would be Destiny because of his comment about, he said, I believe in genocide. He said, I think, and during one conversation, like that the Palestinians should just leave. So if you're talking about defamation, that's like an easy out, right? For legally speaking. But this is fucking disgusting. And I'm not okay living in this world where these little fucking punk ass scumbags can just say this shit and get away with it. Like accusing people, usually defamation can be all different types of things. Someone supporting genocide, we throw this term around a lot. That's one of the most, I mean, can you say something more fucked up about somebody than that?
Great video. Give it a watch. From Hassan Piker. Great video.
Yeah, Hassan restoried it. Great video, give it a watch. It's funny because on one hand, everyone was trying to give him credit like, oh yeah, I'm against CPS. Don't call that. That's crazy, obviously, which I agree with. And I was like, good, thank you. But at the same exact time, he's restoring a video entitled "The YouTubers Back to Genocide" with a picture of me in it, contributing directly to the environment in which people think it's acceptable to call CPS on me. And again, I'm not taking any prisoners. If my attorney thinks there's anything in here, if he thinks that there's like a decent shot of defamation, I'm suing this fucking piece of shit, this little scumbag.
When did we ever back a genocide?
Apparently, Ethan's attorney did find grounds for defamation, or at least saw a decent opportunity to charge him a few grand, writing up a cease and desist letter, and Ethan going on to title his next podcast episode, Noah Samson is Screwed.
I don't know how many of you know who this guy Noah Samson is. He's a bread tuber, a lefty. I mean, he's like a revolutionary who's just waiting for someone else to start the revolution so he can talk about it and make a bunch of money.
Oh, nice.
But he made now 2 videos calling me a genocide supporter, provided 0 evidence. And, well, I'm going to get into some of it, not too much. I know he wants me to respond to every point in his video, which I will do in a much more formal setting.
Oh, what do you mean by that? Some sort of symposium?
No, he said, well, he started his second video by saying, Ethan's threatened to sue me. It's not a threat. I'm going to sue you.
Oh. Wait.
I'm literally going to sue you for defamation.
Uh-oh. Oh, boy.
And I can't wait for you. You know, you can do your cute little videos and all that kinds of business on your YouTube channel. But when it comes to, you know, I'd love to see you reason out in a court document about how I and Mudahar support genocide. I really look forward to that.
Before diving into the video itself, which he never actually does, Ethan makes a couple hilarious statements. The first thing he does is double down, again, on justifying the bombing of hospitals by saying Hamas was hiding in them, which ironically is literally the kind of rhetoric Noah pointed out in his video. The same video Ethan's threatening to sue him over.
Who's badass?
I mean, listen, I feel like this is a force that's going to help end the war, not fucking keeping hostages and underground and like sending, just continuing to provoke Israel to attack them and putting fucking like military complexes under hospitals.
He then goes on to say that Hamas was keeping hostages in hospitals, which, yeah, no shit. There's a genocide happening. Of course, they're gonna need medical care if they're being kept alive for leverage. That's not some big gotcha, that's just logistics. If anything, it's a pretty solid reason not to bomb hospitals. But somehow, Ethan thinks this actually justifies the bombings. Like he's arguing against his own point and doesn't even realize it.
They literally put fucking command centers under hospitals. That's not even debated. They were keeping some of the hostages in hospitals too. It seems like a lot of them ran through hospitals.
What's especially telling is how little Ethan actually engages with the substance of Noah's video. Like he never even watches it on stream, not a single second. For someone being allegedly defamed, you'd think he'd take the opportunity to go point by point, refuting what was said, but he doesn't, probably because he can't. The video is just too airtight, too rooted in his own words and actions. Instead, Ethan pulls up a different video of Noah's with the preface, "Here he explains why he thinks I support genocide," skipping all the way past the first 51 minutes of the video. And this isn't even the initial video Ethan is suing Noah over. He's completely avoiding any accountability.
Here he explains why he thinks I support genocide. Let's take a look.
The liberal framework of thought is only able to conceptualize actors in conflict as being good and bad. Israel's far-right government is bad, Ethan says, but so are terrorists. Genocide is bad. I don't agree with genocide, of course, but hijacking ships is bad too. It's against the law, which is bad. Everybody should just stop doing bad stuff. Okay, well, Israel's not stopping. They're not stopping the genocide.
Yeah, bro, and again, your simplistic, moronic take on all this is the problem.
Noah is correct in this analysis, and it's a pretty simple take. Liberals see this conflict and passively support it by fence-sitting. Genocide is bad, but so is hijacking ships. Ethan even continues to lie about the ship's connection to the state of Israel, claiming that it has nothing to do with Israel when it's literally owned by an Israeli. The Houthis aren't just out here attacking random cargo ships for fun. It does look fun, but they know exactly what they're targeting. The Houthis even stopped attacking ships during the ceasefire. And according to international law, when a genocide is happening anywhere in the world, states are legally obligated to do whatever they can to stop the genocide. The Houthis are ethically acting to stop the genocide in Gaza.
The Houthis aren't doing shit. They're taking over vessels that are completely unrelated to Israel. Like, give me a fucking break, dude. You know?
The U.S.
What else did he say?
Hijacking ships, terrorists, good and bad. Israel's far-right government is bad, Ethan says, but so are terrorists. Genocide.
Imagine, what a crazy opinion.
You're nuts, dude.
Yo, get a load of this genocide
You are actually
supporter.
fucking unhinged.
Genocide is bad. I don't agree with genocide, of course, but hijacking ships is bad too. It's against.
Yeah, when you're yes. It is. I'll say it.
Well, and he goes on to say because it's against the law. No, not necessarily because, like, inherently because it's against the law, because
it's dumb.
They kidnapped and took hostages a bunch of innocent people, man.
Yeah, and like
that's the
cargo that had nothing to do with Israel. It was like headed for Italy from like India or some shit like that.
Instead of actually engaging with the allegedly defamatory video, towards the end of the episode, Ethan and his producer Dan shift gears into something way slimier. They start insinuating that Noah might be a sexual predator.
Also, if I was Noah, I wouldn't get into the whole rape denial lane.
Oh, he straight up is all in it.
Interesting.
History.
Some information to tell you, but after the show.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
About him?
Yep.
Oh, about the Cody Code?
No, it's nothing. It's nothing that you know about yet. It's interesting how many people come out of the woodwork. Noah.
We'll get to that.
Exes, you know.
Oof. Is this a new thing?
This is a new thing. This happened during the show.
Okay, we're not going to jump into this, right?
Exactly. I want to do due diligence and everything, but upon initial examination, it seems to check out, and it's not great for young Noah.
Can I say that? Don't say it yet.
I'll say it.
Oh my God, you guys, don't miss Friday's show. So he's a rape. So of course his standard, I don't know what he's accused of, so I'm not actually going to say, but his standard is that unless you can do a rape kit that shows, then it didn't happen for sure. And if you say it did, you're a lying propagandist, genocide supporter.
Mm-hmm. What they're actually talking about is a situation where Noah had a miscommunication with someone he was hooking up with. Something that involved no assault, no violence, just an awkward misunderstanding about whether other partners were involved. That's it. So instead of defending himself with facts, Ethan deflects with character assassination. Ironically, the very thing he claims he's the victim of.
Now again, just to make it clear, because people get very,
Yes.
people like to take things and run with it. So he's a rape. So of course his standard, I don't know what he's accused of, so I'm not actually going to say, but you are not accusing him of committing any crimes or doing R-word or anything like that. The accusation is that he's a sleaze.
Absolutely. Noah Samson, as far as I know, is not a rapist. He, our relationship that we had was mostly consensual, obviously, other than the fact that I didn't abuse other people.
Yeah.
So I want to make that very clear that is not, I'm not making any allegations against him. I just want people to know that, people can portray themselves one way online, and that's not who they are.
Alright, let's dive into the lawsuit, because this is where things get really interesting. What Ethan is engaging in is called a SLAPP suit, strategic lawsuit against public participation, when someone, usually with more money and influence, files a lawsuit not because they actually expect to win, but to silence or intimidate their critic. It's not about justice, it's about shutting people up. California, where Ethan and Noah both live, has strong anti-SLAPP protections in place in order to combat this sort of lawsuit. Here's how it works. 1. The speech has to be protected, meaning political commentary, criticism, media analysis, stuff that contributes to public discourse. Noah's video? That's textbook protected speech. 2. You respond with a motion to strike, basically telling the court this is a silencing tactic. You have 30 days after being served to file it. 3. You then have to convince the judge that your speech qualifies for protection. In Noah's case, he's criticizing a public figure, using public content, and making political commentary based upon statements Ethan made publicly that Noah is commenting on based on his opinion. Ethan is backing Israel's genocide by saying X, Y, and Z. So yeah, it qualifies. 4. After that, the burden flips to the person suing, so Ethan and his lawyers would have to prove they're likely to win the defamation case. Not just maybe. They need actual evidence, a strong case, and a real shot at success. The only way they could do this is arguing Noah's statements were made with malice and somehow he knew he was lying in the process, which doesn't hold up because all Noah did was take Ethan's own words and argue that those words amount to support for genocide. That's not malice, that's media criticism. When the plaintiff is a public figure, they often have to prove damages, and although Ethan's channel has been losing subscribers and viewers, there's no way of putting the blame on Noah. At this point, Ethan's infamous for his takes on Israel's genocide, and that fallout was already well underway before Noah even dropped the video. 5. If they can't do that, the judge grants the motion and the case gets dismissed. And number 6, you get your legal fees covered. Not damages, not a payout, but your attorney fees get reimbursed, so you don't lose money just for defending your right to speak. It's a system designed to stop rich people from weaponizing lawsuits against people who say things they don't like. And honestly, it exists for exactly this kind of situation. So, what exactly are the allegedly defamatory statements Ethan's lawyers point to in the cease and desist? When I first read through the letter, I was genuinely surprised by how weak these examples are, even before getting into their reasoning. On their own, they barely hold any weight. There is actually one out-of-context clip in Noah's video that I fully expected to see called out in the letter, but it's not even mentioned. Instead, the lawyers go after solid, in-context claims about Ethan and try to argue that those somehow don't support Noah's point that Ethan backs a genocide, simply because Ethan said otherwise in a statement prior. The first supposedly defamatory statement, it's the title of the video, the YouTubers who backed a genocide. So right from the jump, their defamation argument is on shaky ground. They try to treat the word backed as if it's the same thing as supported, which is debatable. Noah could have said support if that's what he meant, but he chose backed for a reason. It's a stronger, more specific word, and it leaves room for the idea that these creators might have unintentionally backed Israel's genocide through the narratives they pushed. Support, in my eyes, suggests they have outright stated that the genocide is good, while the word backed suggests some unintentionality. The second alleged defamatory statement is when Noah said this.
In the content nuke, you can find just about every type of what we just looked at in terms of manufacturing consent. Ethan spreads atrocity propaganda. He shares the Hamas mass rape hoax, the same hoax that was used by the Western media, the US government, and the Israeli government to justify a genocide.
They go on to basically argue that the quote, mass rape hoax is not a hoax, citing several paragraphs from the UN report, such as, overall, based on the totality of information gathered from multiple and independent sources at the different locations, there are reasonable grounds to believe that conflict-related sexual assault occurred at several locations across the Gaza periphery, including in the form of rape and gang rape during the 7 October 2023 attacks. Credible circumstantial information which may be indicative of some forms of sexual violence, including genital mutilation, sexualized torture, or cruel, inhumane, degrading treatment, was also gathered. Okay, so one of the big claims Ethan's legal team hangs their hat on is the idea that Noah dismissed the Hamas mass rape narrative as a hoax. But here's the thing, the entire debate around this isn't about whether rape took place. No one's denying that sexual violence could have occurred. What's in question is the claim that it was a coordinated military tactic orchestrated by Hamas. That part, still unproven. Even the UN report, which they cite in the cease and desist letter, doesn't confirm that. In fact, it literally says the mission team was unable to establish the prevalence of sexual violence and concludes that the overall magnitude, scope, and specific attribution of these violations would require a fully fledged investigation. So while the letter tries to twist it into the UN report doesn't say Hamas didn't do it, the reality is the UN report also doesn't say Hamas did do it. It's inconclusive. The whole thing is very speculative. Even if Noah had called the entire thing a hoax, and let's say for argument's sake it wasn't, Ethan would still have to prove Noah Noah knew it wasn't, and said it anyway with malice, which is basically impossible considering the UN's own language is vague at best. They say there's reason to believe sexual violence happened, but no clear evidence, and absolutely nothing tying it directly to Hamas as a governing force. So the legal argument here? Paper thin. At the end of the section on the alleged second defamatory statement, Ethan's legal team makes a critical error in the comprehension of Noah's video. Immediately after the second defamatory statement, you cite materials that you claim support your assertion that the same hoax that was used by the Western media, the US government, and the Israeli government to justify genocide. The materials you cited only discuss conflict-related sexual violence in general, and did not discuss Israel's actions in Gaza whatsoever. The source Noah cites to make that point is a White House fact sheet, and he's not using it for any reason other than to show that the US government helped spread the hoax. The fact sheet literally says the vice president hosted an event that included a partial screening of Screams Before Silence, a documentary entirely based around the Hamas mass rape narrative.
He shares the Hamas mass rape hoax, the same hoax that was used by the Western media, the US government, and the Israeli government to justify a genocide. He cites the same sources that these parties cite when they go on stage to legitimize more military killing machinery shipments to Israel.
And October 7, last year, Hamas committed horrific acts of sexual violence. Cheryl, I thank you for all your work to bring to light the horrors of this issue and for your film about what happened on October 7.
Ethan's lawyers completely miss the point here, and I'm honestly having trouble even understanding what they're trying to say. The materials you cited only discuss conflict-related sexual violence in general, and did not discuss Israel's actions in Gaza whatsoever. Like, yeah, Noah never said they did. He's just showing that the government is spreading the Hamas mass rape hoax by showing this documentary at a White House event. Alright, the third alleged defamatory statement is when Noah said this.
In his video, Ethan spreads overt misinformation, just straight up lies, about Hezbollah and Ansar Allah, or the Houthis, in order to delegitimize their struggle against Israel's genocide. He cites baseless claims from Saudi state propaganda outlets to attack the Houthis. He also cites a documentary about Ansar Allah, which he uses as proof of the claim that they brought back slavery, when the documentary wasn't even about the Houthis, it was about the Yemeni government before the Houthi takeover.
Their entire argument here basically comes down to Noah not being thorough enough in explaining why Ethan's statements were false. So they start listing off things Ethan said about Hezbollah and the Houthis, claims that, according to them, Noah didn't disprove. One example they highlight is Ethan supposedly saying Hezbollah intervened in the Syrian civil war to aid the dictator Bashar al-Assad, which resulted in the deaths of hundreds of thousands of civilians. That's the version in the cease and desist. But that's not what Ethan actually said. What he actually said was, Hezbollah participated in the slaughter of over 500,000 Syrian civilians, which is just not true. The war led to around 500,000 deaths total, with civilian casualties estimated at about 200,000, and Hezbollah is nowhere near responsible for all of it.
They participated in the slaughter of over 500,000 Syrian civilians to help a dictator, Bashar Assad, stay in power. They indiscriminately bombed over civilian centers, and they killed hundreds of thousands of civilians in what can only be described as a genocide.
His lawyers clearly know the original claim is indefensible, so they rewrite it, soften it, to sound more factually grounded. It's an intentional move to make the argument seem stronger than it actually is. And as far as I understand, Noah is not obligated to prove statements are false when they are quite clearly false. He didn't say every claim about Hezbollah was incorrect. He simply said Ethan spread overt misinformation about Hezbollah, which he did, as I just proved.
Ethan spreads overt misinformation, just straight up lies, about Hezbollah.
Then they try to go after Noah for not debunking Ethan's claim that the Houthis are bringing back slavery, and instead just questioning the credibility of Ethan's source. That source being a newspaper owned by the Saudi royal family. You know, the same people actively committing genocide against the Houthis. All Noah even says is Ethan cites baseless claims from Saudi state propaganda outlets. That's simply a fact, or at the very least, arguably true.
He cites baseless claims from Saudi state propaganda outlets to attack the Houthis.
Personally, if your sources are, quote, sources close to the group, or several local reports, without any direct quotation, That's a baseless claim. They also argue it's misleading to say the documentary Ethan cited wasn't about the Houthis because it came out in 2014, and technically the Houthis controlled some parts of Yemen as early as 2011.
He also cites a documentary about Ansar Allah, which he uses as proof of the claim that they brought back slavery when the documentary wasn't even about the Houthis, it was about the Yemeni government before the Houthi takeover.
But the point still stands. The documentary isn't about the Houthis. And what makes it even funnier is they admit this in their own letter. They write, the documentary focused on Yemen's overall culture of slavery and the deposed government's denial of its existence. Deposed being the key word. That means the previous government. So yeah, they kind of cooked themselves with that one. Alright, I'm gonna start going through these a bit quicker, because the alleged defamatory statements become weaker and weaker as you go down the list. The fourth alleged defamatory statement is when Noah said this.
He spreads long debunked Nakba denialist talking points that have been used for decades to legitimize Israeli colonization of Palestine.
In much of this section, they go on to talk about Bad Empanada, and his explanation for the claim of Ethan's Nakba denialism, as Noah suggested that his audience watch Bad Empanada's video for more information.
In the case of liberal Zionists like Ethan Klein, using his weird personal Zionist crash out as a jumping off point to educate people about the ideology that he adheres to is a great use of time, I think. And Bad Empanada has done a fantastic job with that. His videos have reached pretty wide audiences and exposed them to the reality and history of the genocidal Zionist project. That's a really good thing. That's a really important thing that he's doing, and I think many of you can probably also help out with that.
Their main point is that nothing Ethan said denies or downplays the Nakba, which is wild considering he literally said that more Jews were displaced by the Nakba than Palestinians.
Israel is a country of refugees. If the Jews didn't come from Europe after the Holocaust, they came from the surrounding Arab countries that expelled them in massive amounts following the 1948 war. In fact, there was more Jews displaced than Palestinians during the Nakba. 1 million Jews. All of these surrounding Arab countries had vibrant Jewish communities in huge number, hundreds of thousands. Now, if you look at them, you're looking at close to, if not literally, 0 Jews left in these countries.
And sure, on a surface level, that stat might check out if you completely ignore the context. Palestinians were expelled from their homes, while many Jews immigrated to Israel on their own volition. Countries were outright bribed by the Israeli state to send their Jewish population to Israel, like Yemen, for example. Yemeni children were subsequently stolen from their parents and given to Ashkenazi Jews in order to force assimilation. There are even examples of Israel staging terror attacks in other countries to scare Jews into migrating to Israel. So even if Ethan's statement is technically true, it still downplays the Nakba by stripping it of all historical context and presenting it as some kind of equal exchange, which it wasn't. The fifth alleged defamatory statement is also about the UN report, when Noah said that it contradicted Ethan's own claims directly.
Ethan cites sources that contradict his own claims directly, such as the UN report he claims proves the Hamas mass rapes allegation.
There's a UN report that concludes it happened,
which the report itself denies.
Like I said previously, Noah's basically correct. The UN report never says Hamas committed mass rape. It never says they didn't commit mass rape. It more or less states it's inconclusive, with some information leading them to believe sexual violence probably occurred. However, Ethan states with gusto that Hamas mass raped hundreds of Israelis, which was never proven by the UN report.
I can't believe how quickly leftists go from believe all women to pics or it didn't happen. The vast majority of people, if not all, who were raped were murdered on the spot, obviously.
Gam Goldstein Almog was kidnapped from her home on October 7th by Hamas terrorists and was held captive for 51 days.
Hassan, maybe you would like to call her a liar. Please, go right ahead.
Doesn't matter if happened on October 7th.
There are dozens of testimonies from witnesses, most of who were in hiding and heard or saw it happen. And each week there's more stories coming out. There's a UN report that concludes it happened.
Doesn't matter.
But Hassan needs a rape kit from a mutilated body. It's so vile to deny the suffering and trauma of the victims just because you need your heroes at Hamas to be perfect.
Now, the sixth and final alleged defamatory statement is where things get interesting, because this alleged defamatory statement is regarding none other than Timothée Chalamet himself. Noah claims that Ethan smeared Timothée as a terrorist with zero credible evidence.
He spends 20 minutes in the video smearing a 19-year-old survivor of the US-backed Saudi genocide in Yemen as a terrorist with zero credible evidence.
Ethan's lawyers claim in the letter that, quote, the nuke shows social media posts of al-Haddad admitted to being a Houthi terrorist and echoed the Houthis' genocidal rhetoric. Great writing in that statement. There's actually a handful of grammar and spelling mistakes throughout this entire letter. It's really quite profound. Okay, so Tim Houthi has social media posts admitting to being a Houthi terrorist. Let's see the social media posts in question.
Let's go ahead and take a look at his social media and see if that lines up.
All right, let's see here. Tel Aviv will burn in the coming hours, ready for sacrifice and eager for martyrdom. Maybe he's talking about football? Here he is singing a song with the words, "Do you threaten us with what we are waiting for, son of a Jew?" The meaning of Houthi is a title, and it's not something to fear, but for the Jews. They are very afraid of this title. The execution we will carry out on all Zionists, with the lovely depiction of a man impaled through his asshole and out of his mouth with a pike, or how Hassan likes to say it, a pike for a cut. Okay, why would he retweet this article called "Houthis use social media to boost global prominence and support"? Israel falls. Wait for the new operation in Tel Aviv. The Jaffa drone, which no Israeli defense can stop. The ships we bombed and sank. I know the red arrow is supposed to be a cool military Hamas thing. This is a butt plug. Just saying. To every Zionist, I will put this into your stomach. And let me state the obvious. Jew and Zionist is clearly interchangeable to this guy. Okay, but hating Jews doesn't make you a Houthi. Are you a soldier? Yes. That seems pretty definitive.
Once again, this is totally up for interpretation and nowhere near definitive. But in the letter, they claim that the existence of a few social media posts somehow proves Noah knew the 6 defamatory statement was false, which is wild because whether those posts actually prove the guy's a Houthi terrorist is entirely subjective. Noah didn't find it convincing. I don't find it convincing. The guy never even says, "I'm a Houthi." If anything, Ethan should be the one getting questioned for defamation here. He knew that Tim Houthi explicitly said in his interview with Hassan Piker that he's not a member of the Houthis, and still, Ethan kept pushing the claim that he was. That's not a misunderstanding, that's a smear.
I don't know if he is allowed to speak on this. I don't know if he's like actually a part of the groups at all, or just like simply a TikToker, you know what I mean? I don't know how to ask that in the best way possible though.
Yeah, I feel like we can ask it pretty directly. راشد حسن بدي يسألك أنت يعني منضم لأي من المجموعات، يعني أنت بتعتبر حالك من أنصار الله ولا بتعتبر حالك بس يعني شخصية على التيك توك، ولا يعني بده يعرف شو الرابط بينك وبين أنصار الله؟
طيب يعني بقول لك يعني أنا يمني، يعني كيمني يعني أنا واقف إلى جانب فلسطين.
His answer is a Yemeni who stands with Palestine.
What led him to go to one of the ships personally? Like what were some experiences that he had that caused him to want to go?
حسن بده يعرف شو هو اللي دفعك على زيارة السفن هاي، وشو التجارب اللي مريت فيها اللي خلتك تهتم بهذا الإشي، وإنه يكون جا بالك إنه تزور هاي السفن.
والله أنا أحب المغامرات، وطبعا هذا كل لأجل فلسطين يعني، وإن شاء الله في أشياء بتكون جديد وأشياء مثيرة أكبر.
He says he likes adventures and he is a big supporter of Palestine.
The letter ends with this. Our clients demand that you provide a retraction and correction of all the defamatory statements identified in this letter in compliance with California Civil Code Section 48A. This letter does not constitute a complete statement of all of our clients' rights, contentions, legal theories, or the facts in support thereof. Nothing stated herein is intended, nor shall it constitute, a waiver or relinquishment of any of our clients' rights or remedies, whether legal or equitable, all of which are hereby expressly reserved. Sincerely, Ram Bar Nassim. Where have I heard that name before? Oh, for fuck's sake. I genuinely do not think this case is going anywhere. Ethan is a public figure with a large media platform. He's infamous across the internet for his takes on Israel, long before Noah entered the picture. The core of Noah's video is political critique, built on public statements made by a public figure. The claims are backed by direct quotes, publicly available sources, and clear analysis. This is exactly the kind of case anti-SLAPP laws are designed to shut down. Because this was never really about defamation. It's about ego. It's about Ethan getting publicly called out in a way that actually stuck. And instead of taking accountability, he decided to try and bury it under legal threats. And that's the irony. Ethan made his name standing up for creators' rights, fighting off bogus lawsuits, and calling out hypocrisy in media. Now he's the one sending cease and desists to smaller creators, trying to silence valid criticism of things he said on his platform with his voice. Even if you don't agree with every word of Noah's video, the idea that it rises to the level of defamation is ridiculous. This is a desperate attempt to save face, not a real legal argument. So no, this probably won't hold up in court, but it already tells us everything we need to know about power, about accountability, and about what happens when someone who once claimed to stand for free speech decides that only applies when he's not the one being criticized. Thank you for watching North Star Radio. Peace and love. Free Palestine.